In the boyfriend's phone, she saw a conversation between him and his friend. "Why don't you confess to your dream girl?" The boyfriend replied, "Because she's too good. I don't think I'm worthy of her." The friend asked again, "What about Zoe?" "Zoe makes me want to become better. Good enough to be worthy of her. Who she is goes without saying." Chapter 1. The boyfriend's response was serious. Not just a passing joke. He carefully analyzed everything from her appearance to her personality and academic achievements. In the end, he concluded, "She's too good. I'm not worthy of her." His friend asked again, "What about Zoe?" The boyfriend sent a life sucks bro meme and continued, "Zoe makes me want to become better. Good enough to be worthy of her." At that moment, my world shattered. It turns out that everything I've been doing was just preparing another girl for him. Chapter 2. I quietly put down Andrew's phone and curled up on the other side of the couch, flipping through my vocabulary book. But I couldn't focus. After a while, Andrew came out of the shower. "Baby, I don't feel like studying today. Can we take a break?" He said this lazily, with his eyelids drooping slightly. I used to love him like this because, in the next second, I would get up, run over to kiss him, and playfully tease him. "How dare you skip studying?" And he would reluctantly reach out to hold me. "All right then, just one more kiss, and I'll study with you." At times like these, I always felt a sense of accomplishment, as if I had saved a lost soul. But the message in the chat, "She's a graduate student. I'm not worthy of her in terms of education." I suddenly felt ridiculous. I looked up at him, picked up my textbook, and saw the expectation in his eyes. "Okay, you rest. I'm going to the library." Andrew looked slightly surprised, then quickly smiled and slumped back on the couch. "You're the best. Baby, I'll pick you up later." I nodded silently and walked out the door. Chapter 3. On my way to the library, Andrew sent me a message. "Are you okay?" I wiped away the tears from the corner of my eyes and replied, "I'm fine." With exams approaching, I didn't want something like this to affect my future. I buried my head in my studies, drowning in a sea of questions. When I finally finished, I noticed several missed calls on my phone. That was unusual for him. Maybe my unusual behavior today made Andrew sense that something was wrong. As I walked out of the library, I saw Andrew waiting for me under the shade of a tree. The moment he saw me, he came over. "Baby, I was cutting fruit for you earlier and accidentally cut myself," he said, showing me the slightly reddened cut on his finger. Normally, I would have found this sweet beyond words, playfully scolding him for being careless while carefully taking out a band-aid from my bag to wrap it up for him. But at this moment, as I looked at his face, he suddenly felt like a stranger. It was as if I had never really known this person. "Don't cut fruit next time." Andrew placed both hands on my shoulders, ignoring his cut. "Zoe, what's gotten into you again?" The word again was a reminder of the past. A past where there was tension between us. In all the time we've been together, I've only lost my temper once, and that was when he forgot our anniversary. "Zoe, it's just an anniversary. How is it any different from every other day? Is it really something to get upset about?" No matter how oblivious he was, I was fuming at that moment. This day is important. Every girl wants her boyfriend to remember it. "Really?" His tone suddenly softened. "Does every girl really care about anniversaries?" When I didn't respond, he began to soothe me. "Baby, don't be mad. I'll remember it from now on." He wasn't just gentle. He immediately booked plane tickets to Dali, a famous tourist city, a place I had always wanted to visit. And just like that, my anger was quietly smoothed over. But, you see, all my anger had just been part of a lesson. Chapter 4. Nothing's wrong. You've always thought I was too nagging, so I'm not bothering you anymore. Andrew stared at me for a long time before tossing out, "Suit yourself." His anger manifested in nights spent at bars, surrounded by the indulgence of alcohol, as if deliberately responding to our mutual friend's question, "Did you block Zoe?" He replied, "Do I need her to control me?" I pretended not to see it and drifted into a deep sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, the phone rang. Andrew's voice, slurred with alcohol and anger, came through the receiver. "Zoe, Can you really sleep through this? What if I was sleeping with another woman? Would you not care? Chapter 5. 4 in the morning. I had finally fallen asleep, only to be woken up by his call. My tone was cold. Andrew, whatever you want to do. I don't care anymore. After saying this, I hung up the phone. The phone didn't ring again for the rest of the night. Strangely, the insomnia and worry I used to feel when he came home late were completely gone. I slept soundly. Chapter 6. I woke up again to the sound of an alarm. How can you sleep? At your age. How can you sleep? The curtains were tightly closed, and the faint light from outside barely peeked through. I noticed a shadow by the bed. Realizing it was Andrew, I asked, somewhat surprised, "When did you come back?" In the past, no matter how late he partied or how drunk he was, he would always crawl into bed, wrap his arms around my waist, and sweetly call me baby, kiss me. But this time, despite the overwhelming smell of alcohol, he just sat there silently, not making any effort to get close to me. I didn't even know when he had come back. When he saw that I was awake, he finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "I was drinking until late, and you didn't call me even once. When I came home, I found that you didn't leave a single light on for me. You didn't even hear me close the door. Do you know what time I got back?" In the dim light, he stared at me, questioning. "Zoe, what's wrong with you?" I sat up, turned on the light, and the sudden brightness made both of us squint. I noticed that his usually clean-shaven face looked a bit disheveled, with stubble on his chin and bloodshot eyes. "Andrew, I saw that I'm not your top contact. It was Laura, the one you called your dream girl." Andrew's pupils slightly dilated, and his lips quivered. I continued, ignoring his reaction. "You told your friend that she's exceptional, that you're not good enough for her, so you settled for me. In your eyes, she's amazing, and I'm not even your compromise, just a stepping stone in your pursuit of love." I sniffled, the last remnants of hope within me growing fainter with every second of his silence. "Andrew, do you have anything to say for yourself?" He suddenly stood up, as if he wanted to say something, then ran his hand through his hair in frustration. He couldn't look me in the eye and remained silent for a long time before finally giving up on any pretense. "Zoe, who gave you the right to look at my phone?" In that moment, the last shred of hope I had died. I didn't expect such a panicked response from him, and for a moment, I felt an urge to laugh. And I did, I actually laughed. "It's over." I spent all of yesterday wondering how I would feel when I finally said those words. Sad, heartbroken, unwilling, but I never imagined that when I actually said them. All I felt was relief. A relationship so unequal, better to end it sooner rather than later. Andrew looked at me in disbelief, unable to comprehend that it was me, the girl who had pursued him for a year, who was saying this. "Are you serious?" After a long pause, he finally realized I wasn't joking. "Fine, do whatever you want. I'm not good enough for her, but I'm not good enough for you either." He said this with a dark expression, then slammed the door and left. Chapter 7. I quietly packed my things. Back then, Andrew, afraid he wouldn't study seriously, had sweet-talked me into studying with him, convincing me to help keep him on track. At the time, it felt sweet, like I had found a boyfriend who included me in his future plans. But now, it all seemed like a joke. Dragging my suitcase back to the dorm, my roommate paused what she was doing and looked at me with wide eyes, utterly surprised. "Why are you back?" I replied calmly. "We broke up." Without thinking, my roommate blurted out, "But you liked Andrew so much. How could you agree to break up with him?" She immediately realized she had misspoken. "Zoe, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way." I didn't blame her. Anyone who had witnessed how much I liked Andrew would probably have thought I would cling to this hard-won relationship. Andrew was good-looking, played basketball well, and always wore a nonchalant smile. He was popular at school and a frequent topic on the confession page. Liking him was probably the bravest thing I've ever done. I gave him love letters, and after being rejected, I kept trying again and again. I sang love songs to him during the school singing competition. I never missed any of his basketball games, cheering and shouting for him. It was through this persistent affection that he casually nodded and agreed to be with me. I guess everyone feels inferior in front of the person they like. Just as he did with Laura, and just as I did with him, so I resigned myself to being the one who gave more in this relationship. My roommate carefully probed. Do you think there's still a chance for you too? The chat messages replayed in my mind. In terms of personality, she's gentle. In terms of looks, she's beautiful. In terms of education, she's a graduate student. I'm not worthy of her. And then, in response to his friend's question, he casually replied, "Heh, you mean Zoe? She makes me want to become good enough for her. That's her only advantage." Turns out, even words spoken at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit can feel like they're delivered at -40. I took out my belongings from the suitcase, one by one, and put them away. No, there's no chance. Chapter 8. I suddenly realized that I didn't need to wake up early to make breakfast for Andrew. Didn't leave the library at noon to get his favorite sweet and sour pork from the cafeteria. Didn't go on evening walks with him. And didn't leave the library early at night because he wanted to play basketball. In just one day, I could memorize so many more vocabulary words, solve so many more problems, and reinforce so many more concepts. The seat in the library I had reserved for Andrew had been empty for a few days, and those who knew him started to whisper cautiously. Did they break up? Well, it makes sense. Someone like Andrew, who only sticks to things for a short time, wasn't going to last through grad school prep. It's a miracle he made it to November. Who do you think broke it off? The library was so quiet that even the slightest sound was amplified. Isn't it obvious? It must have been Andrew. The conversation was abruptly interrupted by the sound of something hitting the desk. This is a library. If you're not here to study, don't disturb others. Andrew slammed his bag down on the desk. Scowling as he reprimanded them, the library fell silent. So quiet that you could hear everyone breathing. A few people curiously glanced at me, then at Andrew. I lowered my head and continued studying, completely ignoring what was happening. For a long time, I could feel his gaze lingering on me. Then, I heard the rustling sounds. Andrew began packing his books into his bag, one by one, making a lot of noise, an obvious sign that he was in a foul mood. It was as if he was deliberately trying to get under my skin. Chapter 9. I wanted to ignore him, but I suddenly remembered that the notes I had carefully organized were still with him. I looked up, just in time to meet his gaze. I wrote a note on a sticky pad and handed it to him. My notes are still with you. I then realized that he had been watching me, though I didn't know for how long. When he saw what I wrote, the anticipation in his eyes slowly faded, and he looked away. His hands paused for a moment. Then he casually flipped through some pages before replying indifferently. I couldn't find them. If I do, I'll give them back to you. I nodded and didn't say anything more. Andrew had never been one to put much effort into studying. He always sought the most efficient way to get things done in the least amount of time. And the most efficient thing he ever did was sweet-talking me into helping him. I used to find it endearing, even sweet. But now, looking back, it just felt like a cruel joke. Chapter 10. A few days later, Andrew sent me a message. I found your notes. Come get them. I didn't want to deal with him, but those notes were something I had painstakingly written out by hand. The time and effort I put into them made it hard to just let them go. I replied, "Where are you?" As if he had been certain I wouldn't refuse. Andrew replied with a location almost immediately. It was at a girls' dormitory, but in the building next to ours. As I walked toward the location he gave me, the noise grew louder and louder. On the other side of the bushes, a group of people was cheering and shouting, "Say yes! Say yes!" I didn't get closer, but from a distance, I saw Andrew with a smile on his lips, speaking softly to a girl. The girl was small and fair, with a delicate face and cherry lips. She was beautiful. Her face flushed as she coyly told everyone to stop making a fuss, as if he wanted to make sure I heard. Andrew raised his voice a little. "Will you be my girlfriend?" Every word was clear and forceful. So, breaking up really did make him worthy. It turns out my existence did have some meaning after all. Through the crowd, Andrew suddenly looked back at me. Our eyes met, and I felt nothing but emptiness. I pulled a mocking smile at him. A flash of regret flickered in Andrew's eyes. Chapter 11. In the crowd, Laura nodded with a smile and, amidst the playful teasing, threw herself into Andrew's arms. Watching this overly dramatic confession unfold, I felt a sense of boredom, but since I was already here, I couldn't just leave without getting my notes. I wasn't sure how much time had passed before the crowd finally dispersed. Andrew didn't leave immediately. Instead, he slowly walked toward me. I got straight to the point, ignoring everything else as if I hadn't seen a thing. I didn't have the energy to curse him, and I certainly couldn't bring myself to offer any words of blessing. "Where are my notes?" Andrew paused, looking down, but instead of pulling out the notes, he took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and lit one, exhaling smoke into the dark night. The strong smell of smoke made me instinctively furrow my brows. I had always hated his smoking, worried about his health, and constantly urged him to quit. But now, whether he lived or died, I couldn't care less. Noticing my frown, Andrew's eyes seemed to light up briefly, but the light faded in the silence between us. After a moment, he broke the silence with a somewhat malicious smile. "Who brings study materials to a confession?" Then, as if remembering something, he added, "Oh, right. There was a bookworm who actually did." He was talking about me. Back then, when I confessed to him, it wasn't study materials I brought, it was a love letter. I was afraid that I would forget my words out of nervousness, so I hid the confession note inside a book, occasionally sneaking a glance at it. After I confessed, Andrew noticed the corner of the book sticking out and asked about it. In my panic, I clumsily lied that it was study materials, ignoring the other implications in his tone. I replied coldly, "You never intended to give them to me, did you?" Seeing the unspoken confirmation in his eyes, I felt a surge of anger. "Forget the notes. I don't want them anymore." The notes were just a pretext. He had only found an excuse to make me witness his love story with his white moonlight. And once again, I had foolishly believed him. Hearing me say that, Andrew's voice took on an edge of anger, his throat raspy from the cigarette. "Zoe, am I just like those notes to you? Something you can toss aside so easily?" In the darkness, his eyes seemed to glint with a cold light, as if he wanted to swallow me whole. I looked up at him, at the face that had once captivated me but had long since lost its luster through endless compromises and concessions. At that moment, it was as if I no longer recognized him. How could someone who had just confessed to another girl minutes ago now turn around and question his ex-girlfriend for breaking up with him? He must be out of his mind. I didn't answer his question. Instead, I went straight for the wound. "Andrew, there's one thing you were right about. You really aren't good enough for her." We both knew exactly who her was. Andrew's face darkened instantly. Chapter 12. When I returned to the dorm, my roommates were in the middle of a discussion. The moment they saw me, the room fell into a deathly silence. It didn't take a genius to figure out what they were talking about. "It's okay. I saw it live. You guys are actually behind on the news." Seeing my calm expression, my roommates quickly resumed their chatter. "That scumbag. How could he move on so fast? Zoe, you did the right thing breaking up with him. That girl isn't even all that. She can't compare to you." "Zoe, I knew they were trying to support me, but I still felt the need to be fair. I actually think she's quite pretty." I glanced at the mirror. With the pressure of grad school exams and the lack of time, my hair was dry and frizzy, my complexion sallow, and there were dark circles under my eyes. But I also knew this was just temporary. One of my roommates looked a bit relieved and said, "It seems like you've really moved on." Chapter 13. My roommates had started openly cursing Andrew in the dorm. They no longer referred to him by name. He was simply that scumbag. The first thing they did every morning was check his social media to see what he had posted, and then they would critique him based on the day's content, thus beginning their day. What began as an effort to protect my feelings had evolved into the #1 item on their daily to-do list. One morning, as one of my roommates brushed her teeth, she checked his updates and immediately began to vent. "Damn it, where does that scumbag get the nerve? He took his new girlfriend to Dolly. It's disgusting, he's tainting my sacred paradise. Ugh, I feel like throwing up the grilled fish I had the other day." Hearing this, I paused mid-brush. The mention of Dolly was like flipping a switch, prompting me to glance over at her phone. The photo showed Andrew writing baby, I love you in the sand on a Dolly beach. Capturing another image as the tide came in, Laura nestled in his one-armed embrace, held in a pose of absolute possession and protection. The girl looked gentle, the guy aloof. They seemed perfectly matched. Even the waves seemed to echo their love. Though I no longer had feelings for him, a dull ache throbbed in my chest, making me feel a deep sense of injustice for myself. The same gestures he used to sweet-talk me on our anniversary, he now eagerly flaunted to his new girlfriend. It was revolting. Spitting out the foam, I joined in the chorus of complaints. Pfft, what a damn scumbag. Chapter 14. When I arrived at the library, I noticed that the spot where Andrew used to sit was now occupied by another guy. He had sharp features and long, thick eyelashes. Noticing me, he looked up and mouthed the words, "This seat isn't taken, right?" I shook my head and mouthed back, "No, it's not." I wasn't the type to hog 2 seats for myself. After I sat down, a note was passed to me. "I've seen you sitting here often. Can we get to know each other?" He seemed to think it was too forward, so he quickly pulled the note back and continued writing, hurriedly adding, "I can save you a seat if I get here early." His handwriting was truly beautiful, each stroke strong and bold. I was about to decline when I looked up and noticed his ears were bright red. His eyes fixed on me with a mixture of hope and nervousness. It was obvious this was the first time he'd done something like this. Suddenly, I didn't have the heart to turn him down, and I found myself coming up with excuses. Having someone help save a seat might not be so bad. With that thought, I opened up my QR code with a clear conscience. The moment I did, his lips stretched into a wide grin, revealing 2 slightly sharp canines, his excitement completely unguarded. "I'm Simon." He sent the message and immediately put his phone down, focusing intently on his work, though the blush creeping up his neck was hard to miss. If not for that, one might almost call his demeanor completely focused. Chapter 15. When Simon said he'd save a seat for me, he really meant it. I thought I was arriving early enough, but he was already there before me. On the table, there was a steaming egg and a bottle of milk. "Simon, I brought you breakfast. Just in case." That "just in case" carried a lot of weight. Looking at the message on my phone, I hesitated because we weren't that familiar yet. I didn't want to seem rude, so I thanked him, picked up the breakfast, and walked toward the library entrance. I'm not really a breakfast person. Sometimes, I plan to start my day with some practice questions, thinking I'll eat later. But I get so absorbed in studying that it's suddenly noon. By the time I get back from lunch, a cold breakfast is the last thing I want to touch. Eventually, to avoid wasting food, I stopped buying breakfast from the cafeteria altogether and started bringing vacuum-sealed bread from the supermarket instead. But even then, I'd often forget to eat it. Over time, I developed the habit of skipping breakfast entirely. Andrew knew about this habit of mine but never tried to persuade me otherwise. He just let me be, leaning against the library's corridor. I looked at the egg and milk in my hand, and a warm feeling spread through my chest. I had always been the one bringing breakfast for others. This was the first time someone had brought something for me. Chapter 16. I didn't expect it to happen again, but after accepting the first breakfast from Simon, it became harder and harder to refuse. Simon seemed determined to bring me breakfast in every possible variation, and I suspected he had scouted out every breakfast spot around campus. Over time, my initial awkwardness gave way to a more comfortable routine, where the two of us would sit together at the library entrance, casually enjoying a meal. "You've got some sauce on the corner of your mouth," Simon pointed out, his eyes bright as he looked at the corner of my lips. I reached up and wiped at it carelessly. "It's still there." I couldn't feel it, so I was about to pull out my phone to check. But Simon was quicker. His finger gently brushed the corner of my mouth, wiping away the sauce. Oddly enough, even though I was the one being touched, Simon's face turned a deep shade of red, as if he were the one being teased. Just as I was about to make a playful remark, a loud thud interrupted us, a sound of something dropping behind me. I turned around and saw Andrew, standing there with a look of disbelief, staring at me and Simon. Since that confession incident, I hadn't seen him for a while. It was strange. There was a time when I would count down the seconds, eager to see him, but now, seeing him in front of me, I felt nothing but resistance. It was as if his very presence was intolerable. Simon glanced at me, then at Andrew, and leaned in close to whisper in my ear, "I'll head up first. I'll take the trash with me." The warmth of his breath tickled my ear, making it itch slightly. I nodded. "I'll be right up." Simon's eyes brightened with a smile again. "Okay. I'll wait for you." Chapter 17. After Simon went upstairs, Andrew slowly approached me. I didn't want anyone to see us arguing, so I gestured for him to follow me into the nearby grove of trees. Andrew stared at me, his eyes tinged with lingering emotions. "Zoe, you never used to eat breakfast. Why are you suddenly eating breakfast now?" His voice was hoarse, and there was an unintentional hint of caution in it. "Is that what you came here to ask?" I used to have endless patience for him, but now, even talking to him felt like a waste of time. "If that's all, I'm leaving." Before I could take a step, he grabbed my hand, his grip tight enough to make my palm ache. Instinctively, I yanked my hand away, and in his stunned silence, I snapped, "What the hell do you want?" Andrew finally fell quiet, looking somewhat hurt. "Weren't you asking for that notebook? I brought it for you." He handed me the notebook. On the cover, it still bore the words, "Hope my boyfriend studies well." Seeing those words made my scalp tingle, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. It wasn't because of Andrew, but because of how foolishly I had given everything when we were together. It turns out that even when a wound heals, the pain of reopening it can still be vividly remembered. After a moment, I found my voice. "I don't want it anymore." I had long since stopped wanting that notebook because any forgotten concepts could now be found through Simon. The silence between us stretched on, so long that I thought we would never speak again. Then, Andrew suddenly asked, in a tentative, almost pleading tone, "Are you with him just to make me miserable?" He continued speaking on his own, his brows furrowed in genuine pain. "Zoe, I'm hurting so much, so, could you please not be with him?" I looked up at him, at the face that once held so much meaning for me, and realized I couldn't find a single thing about him to love anymore. "Andrew, you have a girlfriend. Don't be pathetic." I never thought I'd say something so harsh to him. It surprised me, but almost immediately, it felt perfectly reasonable. "Who I'm with and what I do has nothing to do with you." With that, I didn't look at him again. I turned and walked back into the library. Chapter 18. Hearing my footsteps, Simon looked up and gave me a smile, then slid a sheet of scratch paper over to me. The paper was filled with a detailed solution to the question I had asked him earlier, meticulously explained with patience. In the sunlight, I could see the faint fuzz on his face, his skin remarkably clear, and his nose straight and well-defined. He was truly handsome. I got lost in thought, and before I knew it, I impulsively wrote something in the blank space of the paper. "Let's go see a movie after the exams." I immediately wanted to take it back, but Simon had already responded on the paper. "Sure." Seeing that the plan was now set, I glanced back at him. As expected, his ears were red again. Chapter 19. It seemed that Andrew had given up on preparing for grad school. The basketball court, which I passed on my way from the dorm to the library, was once again filled with the sound of cheers for him. I didn't want to listen, but the loud voices still flooded my ears. What's Andrew looking at? How could he miss such an easy shot? That's not like him at all. You don't get it, do you? He's looking at his girlfriend. The person speaking sounded doubtful. Huh? That can't be right. Isn't his girlfriend sitting on the opposite side of the court? I looked up, not wanting to, but ended up locking eyes with Andrew. At some point, he had dyed his hair a dark red, and he was still wearing the sweatshirt I bought for him. He looked as carefree and nonchalant as ever, but in that brief moment of eye contact, I saw something intense in his gaze, a deep emotion churning within as he stared at me, almost as if he feared I would disappear. He was still dribbling the ball, jumping for a shot, but how could someone focus on two things at once, especially in the middle of a game? The next moment, Andrew landed on the ground, losing his balance as expected, and fell hard. "Andrew, are you okay?" People rushed over, their voices filled with concern, taking over the entire court. Instinctively, I glanced at my backpack. The space where I used to keep a Yunnan Bayao spray and bandages was now occupied by Simon's notes on common mistakes. The crowd continued to buzz. Get Andrew's girlfriend over here. Quick. Where's Laura? Is she here? Laura's voice was gentle yet firm. I'm here. I have the spray in my bag. But before her voice could fully register, it was drowned out by Andrew's pained, almost desperate shout. I don't want you. I want Zoe. Where's Zoe? I want Zoe. It was like a child demanding candy, full of petulance and without any sense. But only those who are loved have the right to be spoiled. Andrew had long since lost that right with me. I lowered my head, quickening my pace as I headed for the library. Chapter 20. The next time I heard about Andrew was through a call from Laura. Her voice over the phone was still gentle, without a trace of anger, considering that her boyfriend had called out for his ex-girlfriend after getting injured. I expected her to be furious, hysterical even, but I was completely taken aback by how light and calm her tone was. Andrew's in the hospital. It's pretty serious. Do you want to come see him? Her voice was so soft, so tender, that it was impossible to dislike her. No, I'm not coming. As if she had already expected this, she replied. I figured you wouldn't. There was a clattering noise on her end, like something had been knocked over, and she tried to keep her emotions in check. Andrew, what's the point of taking your anger out on me? If you have the guts, grab your crutches and go find her. I wasn't sure what he said in response, but the next moment, I heard the sound of a door closing, and Laura's voice grew a bit louder. He keeps insisting on seeing you. I was puzzled and said, but you're his girlfriend. She let out a laugh, tinged with a subtle hint of self-mockery. Am I? Sometimes I forget that myself. After a brief pause, she continued, I've never been treated like this before. It would be a lie to say I'm not angry, but I realized that I should be mad at him, not you. I saw you at the court that day, and I saw you the day he confessed to me. I've been watching you, asking around about you, trying to figure out who this girl is that he can't seem to forget. But then I realized it's not so much about how much he likes you, but more about how the hardest thing to forget is what you can't have. Just like how it was with me before, and how it is with you now. Laura was clearer about the situation than I was, and she was more willing to let go. She sniffled, her voice catching in her throat for just a moment before she steadied herself again. Zoe, someone like him isn't good enough for me, and he's certainly not good enough for you. I never imagined hearing something like that from her. If it weren't for the awkward circumstances, I think she and I could have been good friends. So, you too. It was like she knew what I was going to ask. She let out a bitter laugh. Of course. We'll break up. Just not right now. I don't want to be labeled as the heartless girlfriend who dumped her boyfriend while he was sick. Chapter 21. On the day of the grad school exams, the classroom was filled with the soft rustling of pencils on paper. As I looked at the test questions, I felt a sense of relief, like finally seeing the dawn after a long night. After finishing the last exam and stepping out of the testing room, I saw Simon leaning his head slightly. Congratulations on finishing the exams. You're now one step closer to Simon's heart. He said this as he naturally took my hand, his gaze fixed straight ahead. This was the first time Simon had held my hand. He did it so casually that I thought he wasn't nervous at all. Just as I was about to tease him, I noticed sweat beading on his forehead. And it was December. In the end, I had overestimated his composure. After a long and enjoyable meal, Simon's hand found mine again, our fingers interlocking perfectly. His palm was warm and dry. Why hadn't I noticed how clingy he was before? We picked a movie to watch. Though the choice of genre was poor, it turned out to be a disappointing romance with a bad ending. But neither of us was really focused on the film. In the dim light of the theater, I noticed Simon's head inching closer to mine. Just as he was about to close the gap, he broke the mood by whispering, "You can still say no if you want to. I won't overstep." He spoke in a soft, breathy voice, his warm breath brushing against my neck. We were so close that I could see his long eyelashes fluttering in the flickering light of the theater. I watched as Simon's Adam's apple bobbed with a nervous gulp, and I couldn't resist any longer. I leaned in and wrapped my arms around his neck. By the time the movie ended, neither of us could recall what it was about. All we could remember was the sight of each other's flushed faces, red as a monkey's behind, caught in the corners of our eyes. Chapter 22. After the exams, time suddenly seemed more abundant. Even though I still had my graduation project to work on, Simon and I had plenty of time to be together. I finally asked the question that had been lingering in my mind. Simon, what do you like about me? As soon as I asked, I realized just how nervous I was. Simon playfully pinched my nose. You're so wonderful, what's not to like? He stared into my eyes for a moment before slowly explaining how his feelings for me had developed. Do you know how disciplined you are? No matter the weather, you're always in that same spot, never missing a day. Every time I looked up, I could see you. Whenever I got frustrated with a problem or felt like giving up, just seeing you made me feel calm again. He gently pinched my cheek before continuing. And, you probably forgot, but you once lent me an umbrella. I was standing outside the library, waiting for the rain to stop, when you offered me your umbrella and smiled, telling me to keep going, like an angel. Then he mumbled, "It would have been perfect if that annoying ex-boyfriend of yours hadn't been there." His words triggered my memory. Back then, Andrew and I both had umbrellas. When I saw a tall figure standing by the library entrance, trying to memorize vocabulary in the rain, I handed over my umbrella without a second thought and encouraged him with a keep going. Andrew had even mocked me for it, saying I was meddling. You have no idea how much your ex-boyfriend annoyed me. But now, at least I have a title. I'm not the guy who has to quietly walk back to the library alone anymore. This time, if he bothers you again, I have the confidence to stand up to him. Simon was smug, his smile carefree, brimming with youthful energy. So, he had been quietly stewing and competing with himself all along. I stood on tiptoe and gently kissed him on the lips. Now that you have the right to be jealous, make sure you cherish it. Simon, emboldened, let his gaze burn into me, his voice dropping as he called my name. Zoe. A tightly wound string in my mind suddenly snapped. Chapter 23. Simon was clingy. He would often linger at the dorm entrance, delaying my departure. And I didn't mind. I didn't want to be apart from him either. When we finally did part, I saw him smiling under the moonlight, his happiness unmistakable. Go on, I urged. Simon took a few steps, then kept turning back, his eyes filled with reluctance. After finally sending him off, just as I was about to enter the dorm, I felt a sudden grip on my arm. I turned around to see a pair of reddened eyes. Zoe. I broke up with her. Andrew's hand clung tightly to mine. I tried to pull away several times, but his grip was firm, almost bruising. I glanced at my arm, noticing it was already turning red. He never knew how to consider others' feelings. Not when we were together, and not now that we were apart. I looked at him, my expression indifferent. Oh, what a coincidence. I have a boyfriend now. Andrew stepped closer, wincing as his injured foot flared up with pain, a soft hiss escaping his lips. His voice was even more hoarse, his emotions boiling over. Zoe, I love you. I can't live without you. I was wrong. I was really wrong. He had always been carefree and unrestrained, but tonight, it seemed like all his pride had been shattered. Please, don't leave me. If we were still together, I would never have had the chance to see him like this. You're hurting my hand. Andrew paused, then released his grip. You never learned how to treat others well. It's like you think anyone who loves you has to be ready to suffer. But Andrew, why? I'm sorry, I cut him off. I really don't like you anymore. My boyfriend gets jealous easily, so you'd better not show up in front of me again. With that, I turned to leave. His voice, barely audible, strained and restrained, reached me. My birthday's coming up. You promised you'd bake me a cake. The sound of the door unlocking filled the air, and I didn't look back. When you learn how to love someone, there will be someone who will bake it for you. But that person won't be me. Behind me, his voice trembled with emotion. Zoe, I'll wait for you. I didn't stop walking. Suit yourself. Chapter 24. I had just settled into bed when Simon's personalized ringtone started playing. Come outside for a moment. There's something I almost forgot to give you. I dashed out the door. The night was cool and serene, and Simon's tall figure stood silhouetted by the moonlight, a silver glow tracing his outline. What is it? He gently pulled my hand towards him, slowly wrapping my fingers around a thin ribbon that led to a small, square box. I made you a cake. His expression was so clearly seeking praise that I couldn't help but laugh. But it's not my birthday today. Simon clasped my other hand, intertwining our fingers. Who says you can only eat cake on your birthday? What else is a boyfriend good for? His eyes were filled with affection, and my heart melted. In his gaze, where I could see my reflection, I stood on tiptoe, our eyes locked. I don't know who initiated it, but by the time we parted, Simon's breathing had deepened. He lowered his voice, speaking softly, over and over. I love you, Zoe. Epilogue. After Simon and I finally parted for the night, a light drizzle began to fall, blurring the world around us. I ran back inside to grab an umbrella for Simon. He grinned from ear to ear, saying, "It's still the same umbrella, our first love token." The umbrella was large but quite ugly. A freebie from some bank. Only Simon could cherish it like a treasure. You'd better go now, I urged him. I was worried that if he didn't leave soon, he might just end up spending the night under the bike shed. All right. After Simon left, I noticed a shadow lurking in the bushes behind the bike shed. I didn't know how long he had been standing there, but his hair was drenched, plastered to his face, and still dripping with water. He looked utterly miserable, like a stray dog. That was the last time I saw Andrew. Some time later, on the day of Simon's graduate ceremony, he proposed to me in front of the entire school. He covered his mouth, pretending to cough, trying to maintain his composure, but his words gave him away completely. Honey, say yes. The crowd around us started to cheer. Don't say yes. He's already calling you wife without permission. Where's his manners? Blushing furiously, Simon waited, and I softly replied, yes. The wedding went as planned, with guests coming and going, but amidst the celebrations, I unexpectedly received a notebook. Next to the words, "Hope my boyfriend studies well," a few new characters had been added. After all these years of waiting, I still couldn't have you. I tossed the notebook into the trash without a second thought. Affection that comes too late is worth less than weeds.